Social decline and poverty is spreading all over the United States after COVID-19. Wake up, America! The so-called land of opportunity is quickly becoming a land of despair and hopelessness. Social decline and poverty are spreading like wildfire, and yet our leaders continue to turn a blind eye. From inner cities to rural towns, the effects of poverty can be seen in broken families, failing schools, and rising crime rates. But let's call it what it is, a failure of leadership and a lack of will to address the root causes of poverty. It's time to stop sugarcoating the issue and start having real, honest conversations about issues that have led to this decline. We need to challenge the status quo and demand that our leaders take real, tangible steps to address poverty and provide opportunities for all Americans to succeed. It's time to stop making excuses and start taking action before it's too late. The COVID-19 pandemic, inflation, the war in Ukraine, and the 2023 recession have laid bare the deep-seated issues of social decline and poverty that have been plaguing the United States for decades. As job losses and economic hardship continue to rise, more and more Americans are finding themselves struggling to make ends meet. But the effects of poverty go far beyond just financial struggles. The pandemic has highlighted the dire need for accessible health care, affordable housing, and reliable education in marginalized communities. We cannot afford to wait any longer to address these issues. It is time for bold action and systemic change to ensure that all Americans have the opportunity to live a life of dignity and prosperity. The post-pandemic era should not just be about going back to the old normal. It should be about building a new, fairer, and more equitable society. We have a lot to cover in this video, but before moving on, we kindly ask you to support our work with a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Social decline and poverty have been on the rise in the United States for decades, but the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated this trend, leading to a sharp increase in the number of people struggling to make ends meet. In states like California, New York, and Florida, the poverty rate has skyrocketed, with millions of residents now living below the poverty line. One of the most visible manifestations of social decline and poverty is the growing number of homeless individuals and families. As housing costs have risen and incomes have stagnated, more and more people have been forced to live on the streets, with tent cities and makeshift shelters popping up in cities across the country. This not only reflects the economic hardship faced by many Americans, but also the lack of affordable housing and the failure of government policies to address this crisis. Drug and alcohol abuse has been on the rise since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, as the stress and trauma of living through a global crisis have taken a toll on mental health. According to a study by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the number of adults reporting substance use disorder increased from 8.5 million in 2019 to 11 million in 2020. This represents a 29% increase in the number of people struggling with addiction. Furthermore, a survey conducted by the American Medical Association, or AMA, found that the number of people reporting symptoms of alcohol use disorder increased by 41% during the pandemic. Additionally, a study by the National Institute on Drug Abuse found that the number of overdose deaths involving opioids increased by 18% between 2019 and 2020. Poverty is a significant risk factor for drug and alcohol abuse, as the stress and trauma of living in poverty can take a toll on mental health and lead to addiction. According to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, adults living in poverty are more than twice as likely to have a SUD compared to those living above the poverty line. The government must take action and provide more resources for those in poverty and increase support for those struggling with addiction. This may include increasing funding for addiction treatment programs, expanding access to healthcare and mental health services, and providing financial assistance for those in need. Additionally, there's a need for more resources for people in poverty and people struggling with addiction. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on poverty rates in the United States, leading to an increase in the number of Americans living below the poverty line. According to the Urban Institute, the poverty rate reached its highest level in over a decade in 2020, with an estimated 34 million Americans living below the poverty line. This number increased in 2021 and 2022 due to the ongoing economic crisis caused by the pandemic. The poverty rate was projected to reach up to 15% by the end of 2022, leaving more than 45 million people living below the poverty line. This highlights the need for effective policies and programs to address poverty and inequality in the United States. Additionally, the pandemic has disproportionately affected marginalized communities and those with lower income, exacerbating existing inequalities. Poverty and inequality are not just economic issues in New York City. They also have a profound impact on the health and well-being of its residents. Studies have shown that individuals living in poverty are more likely to suffer from poor mental health and lack access to necessary medical care. According to a report by the New York City Comptroller's Office, nearly 1 in 5 New York City residents live in poverty, with the poverty rate being even higher for communities of color and immigrant communities. Furthermore, a study by the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene found that individuals living in poverty are more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety and have fewer chances of receiving mental health treatment. Additionally, a significant number of residents lack health insurance, with a report by the Kaiser Family Foundation finding that 13% of New York City residents were uninsured in 2019. These statistics demonstrate the urgent need for policies and programs that address poverty and inequality, including expanding access to affordable housing, healthcare, and mental health services to improve the health and well-being of all New York City residents. According to U.S. Census Bureau population projections, New York lost more citizens than any other state between April 1, 2020 and July 1, 2021. The study suggests that people are leaving for reasons that include unemployment, high cost of living, skyrocketing rents, high taxes as compared to other states, and an increase in violence. The rise in poverty and the social decline has also led to an increase in crime and violence. According to the FBI, the overall crime rate in the United States rose by 3.7% in 2020, with violent crime increasing by 4.1%. This trend is likely to continue in 2023 and 2024 as more and more people struggle to make ends meet. Furthermore, poverty and social decline also have a direct correlation with drug abuse and alcohol addiction, with data from National Survey on Drug Use and Health showing an estimated 10.7 million people aged 12 or older had a substance use disorder in 2020. This number is expected to increase as poverty rates continue to rise and people find themselves struggling with mental health issues, stress, and trauma. A new statistic from the Council on Criminal Justice, which was released in 2022, suggests that U.S. crime is still dramatically higher than before the pandemic. Homicides decreased by 2% between January and June 2022, compared to the same period in 2021. However, the homicide numbers for the first half of 2022, which are based on data from 23 cities, are still 39% higher than they were in the same period of 2019. It is heartening to see the homicide numbers fall, even slightly, but American cities continue to lose too many of their residents to bloodshed. Richard Rosenfeld, a University of Missouri St. Louis criminologist who co-authored the study, said in a press release, "One of the most heartbreaking consequences of poverty is the growing number of homeless individuals and families. According to data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the number of homeless individuals in the United States has risen sharply in recent years, with an estimated 567,715 individuals experiencing homelessness on a single night in 2020. This represents a staggering increase of 2.7% from the previous year. Furthermore, data shows that the number of unsheltered homeless individuals, those living on the streets or in places not meant for human habitation, increased from 9.7% from 2019 to 2020. Furthermore, the number of homeless children in America has reached alarming levels, with an estimated 2.5 million children experiencing homelessness each year, according to the National Center on Family Homelessness. Additionally, poverty disproportionately affects marginalized communities, particularly communities of color and low-income individuals. The lack of targeted aid and support for these communities highlights the inequality that has long plagued the United States. Furthermore, this is not only a wake-up call for the government, but also for society to address these issues and work towards a more just and equitable society for all. The lack of action and support will only lead to more poverty, crime, violence, drug abuse, and homelessness, creating a vicious cycle that will continue to affect the most vulnerable in our society. The time to act is now, and the government and society must come together to find long-term solutions to address these issues. In conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare the deep-seated issues of social decline and poverty that have been plaguing the United States for decades. From rising poverty rates to homelessness to substance abuse, the effects of poverty can be seen in every aspect of American society. It's time for bold action and systemic change to ensure that all Americans have the opportunity to live a life of dignity and prosperity. The post-pandemic era should not just be about going back to the old normal. It should be about building a new, fairer, and more equitable society. We must challenge the status quo and demand that our leaders take real, tangible steps to address poverty and provide opportunities for all Americans to succeed. Wake up, America. It's time to take action before it's too late. We hope you have enjoyed our video today, so if you've enjoyed it, please support our work with a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions or recommendations, please let us know in the comments section, and we will respond to them as soon as possible.